The Aquatic Federation had ruled the galaxy's oceans for 3 millennia, which was approximately 2 millennia, and 900 years longer than anyone had asked them to. Their sprawling underwater metropolises dotted the ocean floors of 47 worlds, each one a testament to their self-proclaimed status as the galaxy's premier civilization. After all, they reasoned with the kind of logic that comes naturally to those who've never been contradicted. Any species advanced enough to build cities in the crushing depths of planetary oceans must surely be superior to those pathetic creatures who clung to mere surface existence. Ambassador Hydros glided through the crystalline corridors of the Federation's flagship, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with the particular shade of blue-green that denoted barely contained smugness. The ship itself was a marvel of aquatic engineering, designed to operate in the deepest oceanic trenches across known space. Its hull could withstand pressures that would crush most atmospheric vessels like discarded beverage containers, a fact that Hydros never tired of mentioning during diplomatic encounters with what the Federation politely termed surface dwellers. Another primitive world, Hydros mused to his aide, a younger member of his species whose enthusiasm for Federation superiority hadn't yet been tempered by actual experience. These mammals have barely discovered metallurgy, according to our scout. They call themselves humans, and apparently believe that splashing around in shallow coastal waters constitutes mastery of the aquatic realm. The aide's own bioluminescence flickered with anticipation. Shall we establish the usual terms, Ambassador? Standard depth-based hierarchy protocols. Hydros allowed himself what might charitably be called a smile, though on his species it resembled something that would make most creatures question their life choices. The Federation's diplomatic approach was elegantly simple. They would arrive at a new world, demonstrate their technological superiority by establishing an underwater base in the deepest available ocean trench, and then graciously offer to share their wisdom with the land-bound primitives above. It was a system that had worked flawlessly across 46 worlds, primarily because the Federation had yet to encounter a species that didn't react to their deep-sea capabilities with the appropriate mixture of awe and terror. Of course, Hydros replied, adjusting the pressure suit that allowed him to function in the ship's relatively low-pressure environment. Though I suspect this will be even more straightforward than usual. Our preliminary scans indicate these humans have barely begun to explore their own ocean. They appear to spend most of their time fighting each other over patches of dirt and arguing about who gets to burn which fossil fuel. The irony that the Federation's own rise to galactic prominence had begun with similar resource conflicts was not lost on Hydros, though he had long since developed the selective memory that comes standard with positions of unquestioned authority. The Federation's early history of brutal underwater territorial wars had been conveniently reframed as establishing natural dominance patterns in their official records. As their vessel approached Earth's outer atmosphere, Hydros reviewed the intelligence reports with growing confidence. The humans, it seemed, had developed some rudimentary surface vessels and had even managed to send a few primitive submersibles to explore the upper layers of their oceans. How adorable. It was rather like watching children play with toy boats in a puddle while genuine mariners prepared to traverse the deepest trenches of the cosmic ocean. Sir, the aide interrupted, his excitement causing his bioluminescent patches to strobe in an almost nauseating pattern. Should I prepare the standard superiority demonstration? Perhaps we could establish our base in their deepest ocean trench, show them what real aquatic mastery looks like. Hydros nodded approvingly. The Mariana Trench, according to their scans, reached depths of just over 11 kilometers, impressive by the standards of most primitive worlds, though the Federation routinely established colonies in trenches 3 times that depth. Still, it would serve perfectly as a demonstration of their technological supremacy. These humans would undoubtedly be amazed when Federation vessels casually descended to depths they probably considered unreachable. Excellent thinking, Hydros agreed. We'll establish full diplomatic protocols at maximum depth. Let them come to us if they can manage it, though I suspect they'll need to send messages down with primitive mechanical devices. The ship's descent through Earth's atmosphere was smooth, its bioengineered hull adapting effortlessly to the changing pressure and temperature conditions. Hydros watched through the observation ports as they passed through layers of cloud and finally broke through to reveal the blue expanse of Earth's oceans below. Standard oceanic world, he noted with professional disinterest. Nothing particularly remarkable about the water composition or current patterns. What struck him as mildly curious, however, were the numerous metallic objects dotting the ocean's surface. Ships, presumably, though they seemed remarkably numerous for a species that allegedly spent most of its time on land. Some appeared to be quite large, nearly matching the size of Federation diplomatic vessels, interesting though hardly impressive. Surface vessels were, after all, merely elaborate rafts when compared to the deep ocean capabilities of a truly advanced aquatic civilization. Initiating descent to optimal depth, announced the ship's bio-neural navigation system. Estimated time to trench floor 47 minutes. Hydros settled back to observe what he assumed would be the standard progression of first contact. Initial human confusion at detecting their presence, followed by clumsy attempts at communication, then inevitable awe once the humans realized the impossible depths from which the Federation was operating. It was a script he had performed dozens of times across the galaxy, and he saw no reason why this backwater world should prove any different. The only variable, he mused as their vessel began its descent into Earth's deepest waters, was how long it would take these particular primitives to acknowledge their obvious betters. Some species managed it within hours, others, more stubborn or simply slower to grasp the implications of deep ocean mastery, occasionally required several days of patient demonstration. Either way, Hydros was confident that by the time the Federation finished establishing their presence in the deepest reaches of Earth's oceans, humanity would understand exactly where they stood in the galactic hierarchy of aquatic achievement. After all, when you control the depths, everything else is merely surface noise. The first crack in Ambassador Hydros's worldview appeared approximately 12 minutes into their descent, when the ship's sensors detected what could only be described as traffic, not the gentle drift of deep-sea creatures or the occasional tumbling of geological debris, but honest-to-depths metallic vessels moving with obvious purpose through the water column around them. "That's unusual," muttered the aide, his bioluminescence flickering between confusion and concern. "Sir, are we detecting other ships?" Hydros peered at the sensor readings with the expression of someone who had just discovered that their supposedly exclusive restaurant had a drive-through window. The objects moving through the water weren't just present, they were numerous, organized and operating at depths that should have been impossible for any species the Federation hadn't personally educated in proper aquatic engineering. "Recalibrate the sensors," Hydros ordered, though his voice carried the particular tension that comes with realizing you might not be as special as previously advertised. "These readings must be incorrect." The sensors, unfortunately, had the discourtesy to remain accurate. As the Federation vessel continued its descent toward what Hydros had assumed would be the pristine, uninhabited depths of Earth's deepest trench, the traffic only increased. Sleek metallic shapes glided past their observation ports with the casual efficiency of commuters heading to work if commuters typically operated in environments where the water pressure could crush diamonds into decorative powder. "Ambassador," the aide's voice had climbed several octaves, "one of those vessels just waved at us." Indeed, a passing human submarine had adjusted its course to parallel theirs, and through the transparent aluminum of its observation deck, several figures in what appeared to be casual work attire had noticed the Federation ship and offered friendly gestures of greeting. The submarine's hull bore markings that, when translated, appeared to read Deep Sea Mining Consortium, Shift B, Shift B. As if there were multiple shifts. As if descending to crushing oceanic depths was such a routine occurrence that it required schedule. Hydros felt something that in a lesser being might have been called panic. What is the depth reading?" 8,000 meters, and descending, sir. Still 3 kilometers above trench floor, 3 kilometers above, and the humans were treating it like a suburban neighborhood. The submarine that had waved was now joined by 2 others, and what appeared to be some sort of underwater construction platform that was cheerfully violating several laws of physics by existing at all. Workers in advanced pressure suits moved around its exterior with the nonchalant confidence of beings who had clearly never received the memo about the impossibility of sustained deep ocean operation. "Perhaps," the aide suggested with desperate optimism, "there's some sort of artificial intelligences, mechanical constructs that don't require the same life support considerations as biological entities." This theory lasted exactly as long as it took for them to observe one of the construction workers removing his helmet to take what could only be described as a coffee break, at 8,000 meters below sea level, while casually chatting with a colleague about what appeared to be weekend plans. The Federation vessel continued its descent, passing what the ship's database cheerfully identified as Human Underwater Research Station Alpha 7, complete with observation domes, docking bays, and what appeared to be a recreational facility. Through the transparent sections, Hydros could observe dozens of humans going about their daily routines in an environment that should have been as alien and hostile to them as the vacuum of space. "Sir," the aide's voice had now achieved a pitch that was attracting curious glances from local marine life,
There's something else. The humans. They're not even using our technology. This was perhaps the most disturbing revelation. The submarines, research stations, and construction platforms surrounding them weren't crude copies of Federation designs. They weren't even improvements on Federation technology. They were something entirely different, built on engineering principles that seemed to approach the problem of deep ocean survival from angles the Federation had never considered. How deep do their installations go? Hydros asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Scanning now, sir. I'm detecting human structures at, this can't be right. 11,000 meters, 12,000, 14,000. Sir, there are humans operating at depths below the trench floor itself. They appear to have tunneled into the oceanic crust. The aide paused, his bioluminescence now cycling through colors that didn't exist in the Federation's emotional spectrum. Ambassador, there's a human facility at 16,000 meters depth that appears to be mining magma. Hydros stared at the sensor readings, trying to process information that violated everything he thought he knew about the natural order of the galaxy. Humans weren't supposed to be comfortable in deep water. They were mammals, for the love of the depth. They had evolved on land, breathed air, and by all reasonable standards should have been utterly terrified of the crushing darkness of the deep ocean. Instead, they had apparently decided to make themselves at home. Sir, the aide continued, his voice now resembling the sound of stressed metal. I'm receiving a communication from something calling itself Trench Control. They're asking if we need assistance with our descent, and whether we'd like directions to the visitor center. The visitor center. The humans had built a visitor center at the bottom of their deepest ocean trench, for tourists. They also mention, the aide added in a voice that suggested his worldview was currently undergoing rapid and traumatic reconstruction, that parking is available at levels 7 through 12, and that today's special at the observation deck cafe is something called abyssal fish and chip. Hydros closed his eyes, though this did nothing to make the sensor readings disappear. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was suggesting that perhaps the Federation's approach to first contact might need some minor revision, possibly starting with the fundamental assumption that depth equaled superiority. The voice was quickly shouted down by 3 millennia of institutional arrogance, but it was persistent enough to lodge itself in what passed for Hydros's consciousness, as their vessel finally reached the trench floor, where it was greeted by a welcoming committee of human deep-sea vehicles and what appeared to be an underwater parking attendant.
The underwater parking attendant turned out to be a cheerful human named Eddie, who had been working the deep-sea hospitality sector for 15 years, and treated the arrival of alien visitors with the same professional courtesy he might show a family of tourists who had gotten slightly lost on their way to Disney World. His pressure suit was decorated with stickers that read, "Mariana Trench, been there, dove that, and my other vehicle is a bathyscaphe. Welcome to Earth's premier deep ocean experience," Eddie announced over the comm, his voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of someone who had delivered this speech roughly 10,000 times. "First time visiting our little corner of the abyss? No worries, happens to the best of us. We've got guided tours every hour on the hour, and the gift shop's got some really nice pressure-resistant souvenirs." Ambassador Hydros stared through the observation port at Eddie, who was currently floating outside their ship at a depth that should have been instantly fatal to any air-breathing species, looking for all the world like he was about to ask if they needed help with their luggage. Behind Eddie, a steady stream of human vessels continued their business, completely ignoring the fact that they were operating in conditions that would challenge the Federation's most advanced deep-sea equipment. "How?" Hydros whispered. "How are they doing this?" His aide was frantically scrolling through intelligence reports, his bioluminescence cycling through a pattern that roughly translated to "everything I thought I knew was wrong and I'm having an existential crisis." "Sir, according to our updated scans, human deep-sea operations extend to depths of over 20 kilometers. They have permanent installations in oceanic trenches on 17 different continents. They're not just visiting these depths, they're colonizing them." The full scope of humanity's aquatic achievements was beginning to unfold like some sort of cosmic joke at the Federation's expense. While the galaxy's self-proclaimed masters of the deep had been congratulating themselves on their ability to build cities at modest depths of 15 to 20 kilometers, humans had apparently looked at the same depths and thought, well, that's a nice start, but what if we went deeper? "Sir," the aide continued, his voice now carrying the tone of someone reading his own obituary, "they have installations that extend into the planetary mantle, They're not just mining the ocean floor, they're treating the entire oceanic crust as a three-dimensional habitat. They have vertical cities that span from the sea floor to depths our ships can't even reach. Hydros felt a sensation that was entirely foreign to his species, humility attempting to forcibly install itself in a consciousness that had been custom-built to exclude it. The Federation had spent 3 millennia building their reputation on being the galaxy's deepest diving civilization, and they had just discovered that a species of land mammals had been casually operating at depths that made Federation achievements look like shallow water recreational activity. "There's more, sir," the aide said, though his voice suggested that more was the last thing anyone needed right now. Human records indicate they've been conducting deep ocean operations for over a century. They achieved our maximum operational depths, using what they classify as primitive technology sometime around their year 9. Their current deep-sea capabilities are apparently considered routine municipal infrastructure. The depths that the Federation had used to intimidate dozens of galactic civilizations were, to humans, the equivalent of sewer systems and public utilities. Necessary, functional, and so mundane that they had parking attendants. Eddie's voice crackled over the comm again. "Hey there, folks in the bioship. You're looking a little uncertain out there. First time this deep, we get a lot of off-world visitors who aren't quite prepared for the full deep ocean experience. No shame in it. The pressure can be a bit much if you're not used to it." The pressure. Eddie was offering them advice about handling the pressure, as if the Federation's most advanced deep-sea vessel might be having difficulty with conditions that humans apparently found suitable for retail employment. "Sir," the aide said, and his bioluminescence had now achieved a color that could best be described as impending mental breakdown. "There's something else. The humans, they're offering to help us." Indeed, several human vessels had positioned themselves around the Federation ship in what was clearly a protective formation. Not threatening, not aggressive, just the sort of casual assistance one might offer to tourists who had wandered into traffic. It was the aquatic equivalent of being helped across the street by a Boy Scout, if Boy Scouts routinely operated in environments that could crush battleships. "They've sent us a data package," the aide continued. "Safety protocols, depth management guidelines, pressure suit recommendation. They're treating us like beginners, and that," Hydros realized with the clarity that comes only in moments of complete ego destruction, was exactly what they were. The Federation had been so busy congratulating themselves on their aquatic superiority that they had never considered the possibility that somewhere in the galaxy, a species might approach the ocean not as a conquest to be achieved, but as a neighborhood to be inhabited. The humans hadn't built cities in the deep ocean to prove their superiority over surface dwellers. They had done it because they needed the space, the resources, and apparently because someone had decided that 16-kilometer deep mining operations would be a fun way to spend a Tuesday. They treated the crushing depths of their planetary oceans the way the Federation treated shallow tide pools, as convenient places to get work done. "Ambassador," Eddie's voice came over the comm again, "I hate to be a bother, but we're showing some unusual readings from your vessel. Your bioluminescent patterns are indicating severe psychological distress. We've got some excellent counseling facilities at depth level 9 if you'd like to talk to someone. We find a lot of first-time deep ocean visitors experience a bit of existential adjustment." The humans had psychological support services for beings whose worldviews had been shattered by exposure to actual deep ocean mastery. They had anticipated this exact scenario and developed therapeutic protocols for it. "Sir," the aide whispered, "what do we do now?" Hydros looked out at the impossible sight of humans treating the galaxy's most challenging oceanic environment as a suburban community center, complete with guided tours and gift shops. The Federation's entire diplomatic strategy was based on the assumption that they were the galaxy's ultimate aquatic authority, but here were beings who made the Federation look like children playing in a wading pool. "I suppose," Hydros said slowly, "we ask for directions to the gift shop." The response came immediately, cheerful and helpful. "Oh, sure thing. Just follow the blue guide lights to visitor parking level 7. The gift shop's right next to the cafe. Try the pressure-cooked seafood.
It's to die for. The gift shop, as it turned out, was located in a sprawling commercial complex that made the Federation's most impressive underwater cities look like quaint fishing villages. Ambassador Hydros floated through corridors lined with holographic advertisements for abyssal adventure tours and mantle mining career opportunities, while his aide had progressed to a state of catatonic fascination with a vending machine that dispensed pressure suits rated for depths the Federation couldn't even measure. Their human guide, a remarkably enthusiastic woman who introduced herself as a deep ocean cultural liaison, because apparently humans had enough deep-sea visitors to warrant specialized diplomatic personnel, chatted cheerfully as she led them through what she described as just one of our smaller facilities. "We're actually pretty excited about the expansion project," she mentioned casually while pointing out the recreational facilities, which included what appeared to be a swimming pool at 17 kilometers below sea level. "We're planning to extend operations down to about 30 kilometers by next year. Nothing too ambitious, just want to get closer to some of the more interesting geological formation." The humans were planning to extend their casual municipal infrastructure to depths that would require the Federation to develop entirely new categories of technology, and they were discussing it with the same tone one might use to describe adding a new wing to a shopping mall. "The real excitement," the guide continued, "is happening topside with the ocean floor colonization program. We're looking at establishing permanent settlements across about 60% of the ocean floors on 7 continents. Should be finished by 2057 if the environmental impact assessments go smoothly." Hydros made a sound that wasn't quite a word. The humans weren't just operating at impossible depths. They were planning to colonize their entire ocean floor as a routine infrastructure project with environmental impact assessments. They had bureaucracy for achievements that would have taken the Federation centuries to accomplish. "Of course," the guide added with a laugh, "some folks think we're being too conservative. The deep core mining division keeps pushing for installations at 50-kilometer depths, but honestly, who needs to dig that deep just for everyday resource extraction?" The aide's bioluminescence had now achieved a shade that didn't exist in nature and probably violated several laws of physics. 50 kilometers, he managed. "Oh, that's just the mining folks being ambitious," the guide replied with a dismissive wave. "Most of us think 20 to 30 kilometers is plenty deep enough for normal operations. After all, we're not trying to show off or anything. Not trying to show off." The species that had casually exceeded every measure of deep ocean achievement in galactic history considered their efforts restrained and practical. They had approached the deepest, most challenging environments on their planet with the same matter-of-fact efficiency they might apply to road maintenance. "Actually," the guide continued, "we were hoping to ask you folks some question. Our xenobiological department is fascinated by species that evolved specifically for aquatic environments. We've been wondering about the physiological challenges of deep water adaptation from an evolutionary perspective." Hydros realized with dawning horror that the humans wanted to study them, not as advanced beings whose technology they hoped to acquire, but as interesting biological specimens whose natural adaptations might provide insights into their own engineering projects. They had been reclassified from galactic overlords to research subjects in the span of a single conversation. "We've got some really exciting collaboration opportunities," the guide said, her enthusiasm undimmed by the Federation's obvious psychological distress. "Our bioengineering teams would love to work with naturally aquatic species on some of our deeper projects. We're always looking for partners who can handle the more extreme pressure environments." Partners. The humans were offering the Federation junior positions on projects that exceeded their wildest technological ambition. It was like being invited to help with homework by a student who had already solved problems you didn't know existed. "There's also the cultural exchange program," the guide added. "We'd love to learn more about aquatic civilization development. Our sociologists have some fascinating theories about the relationship between depth-based territorial organization and technological advancement." They had sociologists specializing in aquatic civilization. They had developed academic theories about the Federation's social structure as a casual side interest while building cities at depths the Federation considered mythical. "I should mention," the guide said, consulting a device that appeared to be a standard-issue work tablet, "that we're offering some really competitive research grants for off-world aquatic species. The Department of Deep Ocean Development has funding available for collaborative projects, and the application process is pretty straightforward." The Federation, galactic masters of the deep ocean for 3 millennia, were being offered research grants by a species they had intended to impress with their technological superiority. It was the academic equivalent of being asked if you needed help with basic arithmetic by someone who had just invented calculus. As they toured the facility's research wings, Hydros watched human scientists casually discussing pressure dynamics that would challenge the Federation's most advanced theorists. Children on school field trips pressed their faces against observation windows, watching mining operations at depths that represented the absolute limits of Federation engineering capability. Oh, and before I forget, the guide mentioned as they concluded their tour, we're having a community barbecue next weekend at the 20-kilometer level. Nothing fancy, just neighbors getting together. You're absolutely welcome to join if you're still in the area. A community barbecue at 20 kilometers depth for neighbors. As the Federation vessel began its ascent back toward what they had once considered the challenging depths of the upper ocean, Hydros contemplated the complete inversion of everything he thought he understood about aquatic superiority. The humans had mastered the depths not through conquest or domination, but through the simple assumption that if you needed to go somewhere, you found a way to go there. They had looked at the crushing darkness of their deepest oceans and seen suburban development opportunity. They had encountered pressure that could flatten mountains and responded by opening gift shops. They had taken environments that represented the ultimate test of technological achievement and turned them into locations for community barbecue. Sir, the aide said quietly as they passed the 20-kilometer mark, what do we tell the Federation Council? Hydros watched the lights of human installations growing smaller below them, each one representing achievements that redefined what was possible in deep ocean operation. The answer, he realized, was simple enough. We tell them, he said, that we've discovered a species that makes the ocean look shallow. Above them, Eddie the parking attendant waved goodbye from his post at what the Federation had once considered the crushing depths of an alien world, but which humans had turned into the equivalent of a suburban shopping district with really good water pressure.